Someone else? Good evening, everyone, or afternoon, I guess. Afternoon, everyone. This committee of the whole meeting for February 12th, 2020. And the fun topic of general budget operating review. We'll call the meeting to order, and I'll ask for any declarations of conflicts. Hearing none, moving forward. And ask for a motion to adopt the agenda. It's moved, seconded, all in favor? Perfect.
Yes.
Yeah, Brenda's on the screen. Under section 3, appointments and delegations, we've got Paul from Sunshine Coast Tourism. If you want to come up and have a seat at the table, and the little button, hold the mic close to your mouth so that Brenda can hear you in Costa Rica.
Good afternoon. My name is Paul Kamen. I'm the Executive Director of Sunshine Coast Tourism. Thank you for taking the time to speak with me today and allow me to present to you a 2020 tourism update on the Sunshine Coast. So I've prepared a pretty quick presentation, and then we can get to any questions you may have. So first off, I'd like to acknowledge the Sunshine Coast region is on the traditional territory of 4 coastal First Nations, Indigenous nations, in particular the Sechelt Nation, of which we stand on. Just to review, our mission and mandate is to build a strong tourism economy on the Sunshine Coast consistent with the value of residents, and promote the Sunshine Coast destination in targeted markets through a strategic research-based marketing strategy, and to facilitate the continuing evolution of the destination, and to increase awareness of the value, contribution, and importance of tourism among government population as well as businesses on the Sunshine Coast. So the question I get asked all the time is, how's tourism doing on the Sunshine Coast? So just to give you a few indicators that we use, the website portal, Sunshine Coast Canada, just looking at the statistics, has seen double-digit growth again this year, approaching over 1.3 million page views, generating over 381,000 users. Those are people coming to our page. This is our primary call to action, so most all of our marketing leads you to this website, which also has a booking referral engine, which creates a path to purchase to our local businesses and accommodators. And we've provided over 198,000 referral clicks to our member businesses, generating revenue for them. Our social audience, which we also maintain a number of social media channels, the primaries being Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And we've generated an audience following of over 36,000. And we also promote in much of our marketing materials the use of the hashtag Sunshine Coast BC, which is where they catalog user-generated content across these channels. And we've seen, particularly on Instagram, which is our most popular channel, over 174,000 uses of that hashtag, which is fantastic growth in the last couple of years. We also host media, international as well as local media. It was a stellar year for the coast. We had a 187% increase, which is astounding. We hosted 48 media in 2019 from various publications and media, including television. We also track all of the articles that are written about the coast using tracking software, which generated over 1,057 travel articles about the Sunshine Coast, which generated close to 571 million impressions. So we're getting out there. Another indicator that we watch carefully is obviously the ferry statistics and ridership statistics. Horseshoe Bay Langdale has cooled off a little bit, but when I took a look deeper at the data over the last few years, we've seen almost 8% growth in all of our ferry routes over the last 5 years. BC Ferries is obviously aware of that as they're making infrastructure upgrades. And I do sit on both ferry advisory committees for both the North and South Coast to keep atop of all of the ferry issues. We have 3 visitor centers as part of the Destination BC Visitor Information Network. One here in Sechelt, as well as Gibson's and Powell River. The Sechelt statistics are a little skewed because we weren't open for the full year as we made that transition to managing the contract for the district. As well as there was a little dip in visitors because we changed the service agreement a little bit, where some of the local initiatives such as bus tickets and whatnot, we moved out of the visitor center and focused more on visitors as opposed to the local community, which is serviced in other ways in other venues such as the library and other venues. In total, we've served over 34,260 visitors in our 3 visitor centers on the coast. Show me the money. This is probably the most important statistic I am able to access at this point, which is room revenues for the coast. And I'm very proud to report for the first time in 2019, room revenues have surpassed $20 million, and that's just standard hotels. The green part of the graph is short-term rentals, which is the first year of data that we've been able to collect, and that generated $8 million in addition to the 20. So we're essentially at $28 million in room revenues from both hotels and short-term rentals. And that is unprecedented. As we move forward, I'm also looking for more important, valuable data so that we can give you real information, not anecdotal information about what's going on with the tourism economy. So we have started an investment in becoming a smart destination. We are commissioning a study called the Value of Tourism Model, which aggregates data from the accommodation sector. So we'll have all the information, including room occupancy rates, percentages, all of that information, which then feeds into the next part of the study, which is the local area tourism economic impact model, which will then aggregate some provincial data and give us a better understanding about GDP, taxes collected, employment numbers, and whatnot. So that's one of the big projects we're working on in 2020, and we just started the first phase of that project last week. So obviously we want to be up to speed, ferries being our highway and our direct connection to the outside world. We are preparing for some serious growth here, including terminal development both in Langdale, Horseshoe Bay, as well as Powell River is also coming under review. The Westview Terminal is also being discussed, as well as the 2 ferry service on Route 3, which would increase the capacity of our ferry system, bringing people to the Sunshine Coast. As far as strategic planning is concerned, these are 2 important documents that we worked on with the province of British Columbia and Destination BC. The first one being our 10-year destination development plan, which can be found on our website. This is a roadmap. It was a 1-year consultation process that has provided us with guidance on how we want to develop the tourism economy. And this is a guiding document for our organization, as well as last year we applied to the Rural Dividend Fund so we can prepare a visitor services strategy as we started to take on the management of visitor services, and we wanted to start creating a more collaborative network amongst the 3 visitor centers so that we can serve our visitors in the best possible way. Some new exciting projects that we have coming out. I'm very proud of my team who have just sent to the printer literally yesterday a brand new travel guide for the Sunshine Coast. This project brought in all the stakeholders and input from all the visitor centers, and it has gone to print. We are printing 25,000 copies, which will be distributed in the visitor center network across the province, as well as regional markets of Seattle, Calgary, Metro Vancouver, Vancouver Island, and the Okanagan. And we take it to the travel shows that we go to. It's a 32-page full-color guide that's focused on tourism and will also generate more traffic to our website because a lot of the information is pointing at more information on the website so that you don't have to have every single detail in the printed guide. It helps to send you right to the portal. We also are wrapping up the final touches on a destination video series, which includes a 3-minute overview of the destination as well as community shorts of all the major communities on the Sunshine Coast. And this content will be pushed out through all of our social channels as well as on our website. And I've seen some of the footage and it's absolutely spectacular. We are still, as we speak, in the midst of our spring digital campaign. We work closely with a company called the War Room, which does programmatic digital advertising. And dare I say, this is a thing that kind of creeps people out. You know, when you click on an ad and all of a sudden it follows you around, that's what we're doing. But we're promoting the Sunshine Coast, so lots of people are quite receptive to our ads, so they probably don't mind so much that we're chasing them to come have a vacation here on the coast. So this focuses on post-engagement retargeting of our receptive audiences, and it generates over an estimated 2 million impressions of the Sunshine Coast during the springtime, so people come here during the shoulder season when we have the most capacity. And that's it for my visual presentation, and I just want to leave some time for any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. Questions from council? Mayor Cedars.
Thank you. Hello, Paul.
Hello.
We see you a few places. So a couple of questions. I noticed in the package that you gave us that your application for the MRDT is coming up for August 1st, 2021, and you have to have your submission in February 1st, 2021.
That's correct.
So that's a year from now, and I know that you're starting to work on that already. I think the board has chosen not to move forward with the 3%, and I'm wondering what the rationale was behind that choice, given that a lot of the areas in BC are using 3%. We've done, 5 years at 2%, 5 years, right?
Yes.
So now would be an opportunity to actually move to that.
Yeah. There was a lengthy discussion about whether to go from 2% to 3% in the renewal application for the MRDT. We have a number of accommodators serving on our board, and we defer to a lot of their advice in particular. And after lengthy discussion, they felt that it was a bit of a burden to put another percentage point on the bill, and they advised us to stick with the 2%.
So did you reach out to other communities, other areas? Because there are a lot that are doing the 3%. What's their feedback on that? Have they had a lot of pushback from people in their communities, from people visiting, paying the 3%? Because they are.
I don't have any sort of information in that regard. I do know that it had been contentious in some jurisdictions, but if you, I guess, present it as a big opportunity, it can. I mean, ultimately, I suggested that we should go for the 3%, but I had to defer to my accommodation board members who felt that was too onerous, considering the last time we went for the 2%, it was quite contentious, and it took us almost 2 years to be able to push that one through. So they were a bit cautious, shall we say.
Right. So I understand. I was around here for the process last time. I understand, but we went from nothing to 2%. Now we're looking at an incremental increase. So they've already had 5 years of an implementation. And I mean, obviously from the revenues are there. So I guess I don't see the rationale for not going for it, given the marketing dollars that it would make available to you.
I certainly would enjoy having
Okay.
a 3% tax to work with. What I suggest I could do is come back to my board and question them and see if they want to discuss it from more deeply one more time and provide you with a response.
That'd be great. Second question. Sorry, go ahead over there.
Councillor McLean.
Yeah, so this is a bit of a follow-up to that question. In the annual funding request, in the second paragraph, it mentions that Sunshine Coast Tourism was formed in 2008, and it's a 50-50 public-private partnership. Could you help me understand the 50-50 public-private partnership? Because as I understand, your board is entirely composed of private operators in the tourism industry. So where does the public come in?
Well, the public part is essentially local government, such as yours, providing us funding, as well as the co-op dollars from the province, which is also another piece. Essentially, we work on 3 pillars of funding, which is local government funds, the MRDT, which is a consumer tax, which comes from the consumers, and then from the membership and the stakeholders who invest their membership dollars as well as buy into our cooperative advertising opportunities.
Mayor Seegers, you had another question?
Good. We've talked about this one before, the affordable housing funds. So when the short-term rentals, when you started collecting the MRDT from short-term rentals, the province allows some of that money that comes forward to be distributed back to communities for use in affordable housing. I know that you're looking at doing that this coming year. It was 130-some thousand
That's correct.
that you've collected.
Yeah.
And what I noticed was that there's a split. Some of the funds is actually being retained internally for additional destination work. So that kind of goes along with the other question. If you're not looking at going for the 3%, these other funds are also not available to communities for affordable housing. So you're looking at 40,000 for North Coast, 40,000 South Coast, and keeping some internally. I'm wondering what was behind that decision, I guess, from your board as well.
The housing file is quite complicated, and quite frankly, it's a hard one for a tourism organization to take on. Never mind local governments. It's very complex. As the eligible entity and the funding flowing into it's essentially our responsibility to deal with it. We were in somewhat of a unique position in the province that we had the funding and we had to come up with some kind of criteria that was agreeable to the entire, both regional districts, essentially. So there was discussion at the board, and ultimately the housing was added criteria. At the core of our mandate is destination development and marketing projects, and that housing was an added criteria. So it wasn't that all of that money was going to go directly to housing, because we have a lot of large aspirations for destination development that have, through that 10-year plan, have been essentially put on our plate, besides just marketing. So we needed to find other money to be able to start pushing on some of those other pieces. And then the discussion around the table was also part what's in that destination development plan in regards to housing, is that workforce housing was really an important issue, because a lot of our operators are having a hard time finding employees, places to live, and that's affecting their businesses. So they wanted to focus on workforce housing as opposed to taking that money and building a homeless shelter. They want to target it towards workforce housing because that's part of the destination development plan. And ultimately they decided on a 60-40 split so that we can tackle some of those other things such as the data study that we want to do so that we can come to you guys with real information about the tourism economy. That needed to be funded as well. So all of these different things were considered when we ultimately divvied up that as a proposal to both regional districts. So at this point, we're waiting for consultation and feedback, and I will be in front of both of those districts to discuss these guidelines that we have proposed. And hopefully they'll be signed off on. And if not, we'll go back to the drawing board and see you know, where we want to go with it, or where the districts want to go with it.
So one of the things that we're all talking about now is sustainable tourism. So I guess what I'm looking at is, given that you're looking at taking additional dollars for destination marketing, yes, there is 40,000 for each of the areas, but there's another 50,000 that you're looking on in destination marketing that you're putting in that, rather than looking at the 3%, which would give you a lot more dollars, and potentially splitting up the funds that are coming in that could all be targeted for affordable housing, workforce housing, to the areas. So I guess we have the issues. I mean, we see it. We know that one of the biggest detriments, one of the biggest barriers to economic development right now, particularly on the Sunshine Coast here, is housing. So we know, and we don't have a lot of sources of money either. So we're going to be looking at that as well. So if there are other dollars that would help us move some of those forward, we're looking to how we can get our hands on that, right? So that's kind of where that's coming from.
Yep.
Because we cannot sustain continual increase in tourism if we don't have the workforce to support it. So if you're spending more on that side, it's not sustainable. So that's where I'm coming from inside of looking at how these dollars are actually split up.
Understood.
Okay?
Yeah.
Thanks.
May I add to that? Ultimately, for the MRDT renewal to be successful, we need letters of support from local government, and we need letters of support from the large accommodators, totaling 51% of those properties and 51% of the units of accommodation. So that's part of the dynamic that we're faced with, and what we have to essentially get that level of support. But like I said, you raise a very good point, and I think it's worthy of bringing it back to my board for further discussion, and I will report back.
Councilor McLean.
Yeah, I'm just going to follow up on that train of thought as well. Looking at, is there any way to differentiate the rate of the MRDT between large accommodators and the short-term rentals? I particularly look at the SCRD, and I know they're struggling to find ways to collect any kind of revenue from short-term rentals. This is one way. So I'm wondering, if we can't go 3% across the board, could we maybe shift that 3% towards the short-term rentals?
Unfortunately, that is not allowable under the program guidelines. That change would have to come from the province.
So I have a question for you. The dollars that you put up on the board from the hotel or the room revenues, further on in your presentation, you said you need to do studies based on occupancy rates, so you don't track any of the occupancy rates right now?
Currently, no. It's essentially privately held information, and so we need to have essentially a study and collect that data and then aggregate it. The reason I have room revenue information is because I collect the MRDT, and I can reverse engineer the numbers to tell you what room revenue is doing.
Okay. So through your discussions with your members and the board, how did they feel that this summer was comparatively, or were they just producing more revenue due to higher prices, or did they actually see more people?
It's a combination of both. I don't have the perfect accurate picture as I need the information to be able to tell you exactly, but anecdotally I will tell you that we've seen year-over-year growth in a number of accommodations, and telling us that they've had year-over-year record seasons over the last 3 and 4 years.
Okay. So, because Vancouver was down significantly this year, so Sunshine Coast is still seeing growth.
Yeah.
And do they target specific demographics? Do you guys know where the people are coming from?
Again, a lot of that is information that we're still hoping to get, but I can tell you what we know about how we target market and who our, what our stats are showing from our website analytics, and and also verified through our accommodators that the bulk of the travelers are coming from Metro Vancouver and Vancouver Island, and then we do have a contingent of international travelers that do come as well, but the vast majority, 80% plus, is coming from Metro Vancouver.
So Canadians, basically.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Oh, Mayor Seegers.
Thank you. In our package on page 10, we actually have a letter that is requesting funds from us to Sunshine Coast Tourism. So we should probably refer that to staff for discussion inside of our budget process. I'll make that motion.
Seconded? All in favor?
Aye. All right. I think she's saying aye. And then I just wanted to say thank you for what you do for Sunshine Coast Tourism. You've been around a few years. And I mean, I have too, and I've really seen the growth and the professionalism that I've seen you bring to the organization and to how you portray the Sunshine Coast to the world.
Thank you. I appreciate
So thank you
that.
for that.
Appreciate that. Just for process, would you like my response in regard to bringing the discussion to the board? Do you want it in letter, or do you want me to come back before you to discuss? Letter of what?
Letter would be fine.
Okay.
Before I let you go, we haven't asked Brenda if she wants to speak at all. Oh, you have to unmute. Just one sec. You're still muted.
Is this from Costa Rica?
Yes. Oh, there we go. Okay, I think we can
Can
hear
you hear me now?
We can hear you.
Can you hear me? Okay, yeah, no, you actually asked my question, so I'm good, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on, no new business, and on to business items, and on to the general operating budget review report from David Douglas, Director of Financial Services. So I will ask for a motion to receive the report. Move seconded, all in favor? And over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. So a very short report here, but basically it's saying that in your package today is the overall budget. If you turn to page 14 of your agenda, that is the start of the 5-year financial plan, or that's what your financial plan will look like once we go out 5 years. The headings and the areas will be laid out just like this. And the blue colored in the middle is the 2020 budget. And it shows what we're going to be going through in the next series of meetings is the expenditure side of this. And so we'll be going through the general government planning, community services, public works, facilities, police, and solid waste. So that's kind of where we're starting. If you go back up 2 pages to page 12, this is just basically a summary of major changes to the budget from 2019 to 20. We're not going to go through that detail today because as we go to each department, these items should show up in discussion. Okay. And then page 13 is just a listing of one-time items or new asks from the departments. Once again, today we won't go through this in detail, but as you go through the department's budgets, these topics should come up. So if you either want to keep a running tally that we've talked about it, or I'll do that, and just make sure you're covered off with getting the detail. And turn to page 15. This is, you'll just notice that the heading is general government. And if you go back to page 14, your first line item on the 5-year financial plan is general government. And so the numbers on page 15 will equal the budget number there on that line item on general government. And at the bottom of page 15, there's details there that tells you what's in the general government budget. So under general government, you'll see that there's administration, airport, bylaw enforcement, corporate services, financial services, information technology, mayor, council, and non-departmental activities. So there's quite a list of departments or areas that are included in general government, but it's the same in every department. So as we go through the budgets, you'll see these lists show up that this is what's within the budget, that area of the budget, okay? And if you have any questions concerning, well, what's in here, we'll pause and we'll talk about it, okay? So today in the next few meetings is about passing information to council. So we're going to go through several budgets, today we have 7 lined up today. Includes the library, RCMP, parks, corporate services, human resources, airport, and finance. If we run out of time, we can stop it at any point, and then we'll pick up from there at the next meeting. We have groups or other departments ready to go for the next meeting. If we don't get through this list today, we may want to have a discussion on having an extended meeting so we can get through all the departments, okay? So, so the first department, or the first area we have up would be library. And so we have Elle here from the library to go through. So what I've asked is the departments to talk about what they do, what maybe they see some of their challenges are, to kind of walk through their budgets and talk about lifts within their budgets this year. And talk about some project work that they've been working on or what's important to them as they go through this year. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Any questions before we get started? Seeing none.
Hey, I'm Susan Eggerman, and Elle and I are here to talk about an overview of the library and of the budget. First of all, I want to say that our budget represents the community interests as well as our planning goals and objectives for the library based on a strategic plan, which was developed after conducting a survey. So right now our funding situation is improved dramatically since 2018. Thanks to you and our other local government funders, our new situation is now, when we compare to similar sized libraries, in 2018, we had a deficit of $215,000, and in 2019, it dropped to $37,000. Those similar libraries were those that serve populations of 18,000 to 20,000, and that includes Squamish, Dawson Creek, Nelson, and Terrace. So with regard to our strategic plan, we developed this with renewed confidence. And we began work in 2019. We developed our goals, and now we are working on our objectives, and that will be released in 2020. The first step to doing our strategic plan was to do a survey. We conducted over 500 surveys in the mall. There were, it was fairly long. It took about 20 minutes to complete. And most people were really enthusiastic about completing it and enthusiastic about the library. I know the biggest line item in our budget is staffing, as you probably know, and that two of the survey items related specifically to staffing. We found that 98% of those surveyed visited the library every week, 46% visited monthly, and 4% visited every day. And libraries and service go hand in hand. The number one reason people come to the library is to get help from staff. And 99% said the staff were friendly and helpful. So that's a remarkable achievement for the library. Our strategic plan includes 4 main goals: enhance programs and services, physical space, improve organizational health, and create better communications. We are currently defining these objectives, and it'll be published soon. Now, Elle will talk to you about our library services and more details about the budget.
Thank you very much. And I just wanted to thank DOS staff for initiating contact with us and inviting us here today to push forward this relationship. And I want to say, in the time that I've been here, in a year and a half, we've had fantastic support from DOS staff. So I want to say thank you for that. And to walk through some of the few key points about library service, I want to talk about who we serve, how we serve, what it takes to serve them, meaning our budget, and to finish with some of the challenges that we see in the future. And I often joke that people want the library to serve everyone and to do everything. But it's not really a joke, it's kind of true. So I'm going to walk through some of that. And one of the things that came up in our presentation to SCRD was to look at running through some of the social impact that we have. And so I'd like to give a picture of that as well. So some of the basics, I know you all know, we serve Sechelt, Roberts Creek, Half Moon Bay, SIGD, and Pender Harbor. But that really doesn't tell the story, but it does tell about some of the challenges that we have. This diversity in geography asks us to look at things differently than perhaps some other libraries may do. We know that some people come in daily, weekly, as Susan said, but there are some people who don't come through our door very frequently at all, but can still access our services through a myriad of online applications. So I'm going to be talking a bit about that when I talk about our challenges. So when I talk about the social impact, it's really when we talk about who do we serve. So I want to walk through children. We serve children. We have children's programming that focuses on preschool story time, family maker programs, which really encourages families to embrace technology and to work on that together. We have literacy-based summer reading club and literacy events such as our upcoming drag queen story time. And we partner in our programs with groups like the Literacy Coalition, of which we are a part, Strong Start, and Gibson's Library. So for instance, the upcoming Drag Queen Storytime is a Literacy Coalition initiative, which Sechelt Library will host. And when I spoke about looking at ways to serve a geography beyond the boundaries of Sechelt, we do this through our partnership with Strong Start. So this year, we began a program where we started attending events in Pender Harbor with Strong Start so that our children's programmer had an opportunity to build relationships and to introduce the library to children and families in that area. When we talk about teens, engaging teens in library service is an ongoing issue for libraries across the country. There's a lot of work left to do. What we've done recently is to create a Dungeons and Dragons night. And what's been so great about this initiative is that we have seen people who have never come through the library doors before. And we have new customers that they have a completely different view after coming through the door of what we do and what we can offer and the relevance that we can have in their life. We've also created a small video game collection. And why I talk about this is because it's important, because it allows everyone from every income bracket to participate in a cultural phenomenon that is integral to many teen experiences. So when we talk about breaking down barriers, because I received lots of comments about video games, I feel like it's very important to talk about why this is integral to the social fabric of teen life. We are also a technology hub for the coast, and this is what bridges teen and adult services. We have public computers, we lend laptops and iPads, and those are heavily used by teen and adults. And we are one of the only, if not the only place in Sechelt and the surrounding area where people can get the help they need to access the technology that they need in their daily lives. Offering technology support not only through physical devices, but through people support, whether that's our technology coordinator or the people that you see on our desk every day who spend countless hours helping people with their computer problems, with printing government documents, legal documents, faxing, scanning. It's become a huge part of the work that we do, is explaining technology to people and helping them use it. For adults, we have a lot of categories. So when we talk about career support, this is just one of the ways we support adults in our community. So an example of this is showing Gale databases. So I'm using this opportunity to tell everybody, please tell your friends. We have Gale databases, which are online professional courses, and this helps people bulk up their resumes. We also help people just with their resumes and getting them ready. We have exam invigilation services, which are growing in popularity, which allow people to create the future they want without having to pay exorbitant fees or needing to go off coast to get the designation that they are applying for. Tech support. I've already spoken a bit about this, but it's really important to note the number of people who walk through our doors. So we know the major areas of growth for us are the people who access our Wi-Fi, the people who come with their own devices, and the people who come and use our devices and access tech help. One of the ways we need to improve is figuring out how we keep statistics. So we can keep statistics on computer use, but the actual help that people give, the busier you are, it's harder to actually tick the box to denote when we have provided computer help. That is an issue for all libraries of trying to figure out how you compile that data successfully. So that's something we need to look at for the future. But when people come through the door, they are looking to find out how to participate in our digital age. People are intimidated, they feel left behind through their inability to communicate digitally and to access the information that they need. We help people on a daily basis learn to use their devices, to communicate with loved ones, which we know reduces social isolation, help people feel more confident and willing to try, which we know boosts emotional resilience, and access the information they need, which is increasingly available online, which creates better digital citizens. Homeless population. It's an important library value that everyone who walks through our door is welcome and receives an excellent level of customer service. Staff recently undertook online homelessness training for library workers, which seeks to create a skill set to learn more meaningful ways to engage with our homeless population who come through our doors. It's important that we provide the resources they may be looking for to live the best quality of life possible. Older adults. We have a higher than average population of older adults in our community. This means that our library programming seeks to find ways to provide meaningful lifelong learning experiences that aim to keep people cognitively active and participating in their community. We have programs such as Death Cafe, financial planning, estate planning, literacy events, brain health, and so much more. Caregivers. One of our new initiatives seeks to help those who suffer from dementia and those who care for them. With huge community support from Sunshine Coast Community Foundation, the Seniors Planning Table, the Community Resource Center, and the Lions Club, plus individual community member support, we held a 2-day training session in October to teach people new ways to provide support for those with dementia. This support focuses on providing purpose and meaning so that people live with full humanity for their entire lives, regardless of their ability. This training included both community members and those who work for Vancouver Coastal Health so that we can have the largest impact possible. The result is the upcoming dementia care kits that will be put together by those volunteers who attended the session and will be lent out by the library to caregivers, those who work for Vancouver Coastal Health and those who are caring in their own homes. This is the, quote, information that people need at this stage in their life, and this is the best vehicle to distribute that information. Those are just the key targeted demographics that our programs and services strive to serve, but if you can think of a demographic that is not here, we serve them too. So, how do we serve? I don't expect you to be able to read that, but I want to highlight, because I want to take advantage, one of the things that came up is let people know what you do today, so I want to let people know what we do. So I'm only going to highlight some of them, and that's because in our survey, a couple of things became evident to us. And one was that people know about traditional library service, what was surprising to me was that not everyone knows that we have ebooks. That is something that I thought libraries had been successful at promoting. That's something we need to do in the future. So ebooks, e-magazines, databases. Most people don't know what databases are, but basically we have online services that allow you to learn new languages online, read newspapers from around the world online, watch movies online. We have a database that provides more than 2,000 business journals. We have a small business accelerator. We have online professional and personal development courses, classical music, opera, and dance videos. I've talked about programs, technology support. We have services for visually impaired patrons. And of course, the basis of all of this is we are information providers. We provide information search help for any information requests people may have. So what does it take to provide this service? What you'll see is you all have a handout of the budget, but these are the major highlights of what you're going to see, the difference. So in 2020, we requested a 4.4% increase, and those major line items are staff wages from our union negotiation. They will go up 2% in 2020. They went up 2% in 2020. We are instituting an IT replacement schedule. So we are a technology hub, and that means every year we need to replace a certain amount of computers so that over a 5-year or 6-year period, things replace on a continual basis. And we have requested a full-time equivalency for a deputy chief librarian. What you'll see moving forward for 5 years, the major issues are in 2021, we'll have a job evaluation process. We are estimating, we don't know, we are just beginning this process, and it's never happened at Sechelt Library before. So we're estimating this, but it could be very different. Again, the ongoing IT replacement schedule, and we will have union negotiations in 2022. So those are kind of the major things that you're seeing moving forward. The challenges are many and varied, but everyone here will say that. So I'd like to focus on just two. And two are organizational capacity and marketing and outreach to our various communities. The demand for our service from our library will only grow. And we are just in the process, or I'm just about to begin the process, to complete our annual report. And so that will give you, when that is done, you will all get a copy of our annual report, which will have our statistics from last year and what has grown and changed. We know that it's going to continue to grow. More people will be walking through our doors. Finding ways to give the resources needed to serve an increased public will continually be a challenge. Partnerships and alignment with other like-minded organizations will help, as well as a deep examination of our organizational structure to look at what does sustainable future growth look like and how do we achieve that with the resources we have. But when we talk about the impact of growth, it is something that is welcome and needed if we are truly going to serve our community. Marketing and outreach will be essential for people to understand the myriad of services we offer and how it can positively benefit their lives. When we speak about serving areas that are not in close proximity to the physical library building, it's necessary that we reach those people to inform them of how they can access our services, ensuring that people in Pender Harbor and Egmont, as well as those who might not be as technically savvy, know about ebooks, e-magazines, databases, online services, and everything that they have access to will be hugely important. This requires us to physically be in those communities for some time, because when you're not technically literate, to do all of your marketing based on technology does not work. So we know that we have to actually be there. We know from our survey that many people are unaware of the extent of our services, especially these online services. We have not traditionally allocated a lot of resources to marketing and outreach, but it will be essential for our future success. This is a very brief overview of what the library does, how we do it, and what is required to do well. We are incredibly grateful for the support given by DOS and recognize that the budget decisions made in 2019 drastically altered our future and our outlook. And perhaps for the first time in our history, we are moving forward with confidence that we can meet the many challenges ahead of us, and we are deeply thankful for your support and available for any questions that you have.
Thank you very much. That was good. Questions? Comments? Mayor Seegers.
Thank you. So for those who don't know, the 5-year funding agreement between the funding partners expired at the end of 2018. So we've been a year without one, and we are looking to get to some kind of funding formula or something to move forward, which would then be the basis for another 5-year agreement. So we finished budgeting at the regional district yesterday. I think we have an understanding at least of where we're going to be starting there. So as we move forward, I think we're going to be setting a good foundation for the library's success in the future. So thank you for what you do.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I did want to say, just because I will be leaving at the end of February, it has been a complete privilege to serve this community, and I really appreciate the support. And I will say again, the support from DOS staff it's been great. So thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Douglas.
So if you turn to page 44 of your agenda, it's under Program Library. Under the 2020 budget, we're budgeting from the DOS to provide $535,421 for the library. That's under kind of the best known information today with the new funding formula. And I guess I'm going to hear over the next week or so what the actual formula will be. There's still one party that needs to finish off their discussion with that. So this number could go up or down a little bit, but it shouldn't have to move much from that number. Okay, so that's your budget number for the library.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? No? Okay, thank you very much.
So the next group up we have is the RCMP, sorry. If you turn to page 72 of your agenda, that's where the budget is. However, you also have access to their PowerPoint presentation.
Need some glasses?
No, I said, I feel like I'm on the line. You're checking, I'm on the line. I got to check my equipment. It's an inside joke. Thank you so much for hearing me today. I appreciate being here. And thanks to David Douglas. We've been working together quite closely because the RCMP's fiscal year runs from April 1st to March 31st. So we're different than you. So therefore, me looking at where I'm at for spending can be a little bit tricky. And so David and I have a great relationship, and we are able to talk back and forth around ensuring that I'm staying on budget and my line items are matching up. And so this relationship has been good. So I just wanted to acknowledge that before we start. So then he can also help me partway through if I need him. Okay, so I'm just going to be very quick because I just want to give sort of an overview of where we are at right now. It's hard to see this, sorry, but this was the only way we could lay out an organizational chart for you. On this chart, this is everybody that's employed in the RCMP detachment, Sunshine Coast RCMP. On the top is myself, and then I have 2 sergeants. One is on the left, which is all operations. So those are your officers that are responding to your 911 calls and your operational investigations. On the right-hand side of your chart is my operations support NCO, and that is all things GIS, serious crime, our Indigenous Police Service and youth, and community policing. Under that umbrella, the office manager to the detachment reports up through him with all the support staff. So that the list down the right is the support staff. So we're a unique detachment in that we are mostly provincially funded. So we are mostly provincially funded in that we have 24 regular member police positions funded provincially. and 11 that are funded by the District of Sechelt. All of my positions have what's called collator codes that helps identify the pay, where the pay comes from. So when I'm balancing my budget and moving people around, when people go on long-term operational duties sick, if they're off duty sick, on parental or maternity leave, they will go on, after 30 days, they go on to a provincial collator. So there's some billing stuff that happens that David understands, and we talk about that. And I think that's going to be important because I want to explain that a little bit around the budget. I'll go quickly. But down the right-hand side, you'll see that we have 4 municipal employees that are paid for by the District of Sechelt and do work for me in the detachment. So policing. And then I have 5 positions that are provincial positions. So they're public servant employees. They are paid differently. And our uniqueness is that our office manager is a public servant employee. Some of the larger blended detachments, that position is usually a municipal office manager. So it's a little bit unique. It's working very well. We're doing well, but your municipal employees are employees of the district, but work for me. Anyway, so right now in our situation, we have on the chart 20 constables in the operations side, 4 corporals that they report to, and then on the right-hand side, 2 corporals under the sergeant, and then those positions below are 6 constables. I've currently got 2 people on parental leave, so there you're not paying. Those positions are on a different collator. I currently have 2 constables in the operations side that are vacant, and 1 corporal in the GIS position, vacant. What I did, and it hasn't shown up yet for funding, is to even out the billing, is I moved a position, a municipal position, vacant, so that we would be charging, and it'll come in a couple of pages from now. I'll discuss that our authorized strength is 11, but I can move people, shuffle them under their collators to report and be paid a different way so that we don't have to charge. If they're not vacant, we're not paying for it. So David and I can talk about that. I can talk about that in a little bit. So that's basically the structure. So some of the challenges that we have has always been our human resources, but I just need you to know that all of those positions are now allocated. We have persons for those positions. So it's very good news, and I'm very happy. In fact, our corporal is here on our house hunting trip right now, and I have a constable coming on his next week. And I have a recruit showing up on March 1st, and we have 1 more constable coming in probably May. So I'm really excited about that. We're gonna see that. So the human resources part, I've got that under control. That was obviously concerning. We have 2 officers who are highly trained that have been deployed up to Houston to assist with the Wet'suwet'en protests. And 1 is a municipal employee from the District of Sechelt, and 1 is a provincial resource. We're supposed to be exhausting provincial resources first before we're taking municipal resources out of our community. In a detachment my size, that's difficult because the persons that I chose that was best for that type of situation was one of our municipal employees. He hasn't deployed that much. It hasn't cost the municipality a lot because he's only been leaving, and we have not had to pay overtime to backfill him. So I just want you to know that. That's important. What has been very good is those 2 police officers that have that specialized training and have been in that, because one of our officers was just up there for 2 weeks during all of the arrests, and it was very stressful. They bring back this to us, this skill set, and that was very beneficial to us for the Clack Creek protests, where we ended up enforcing an injunction and 1 person was arrested without incident, and it was very well handled, and I really believe that because we had one of those trained officers there. We unfortunately have seen an increase in property crime and assaults. Our file count is about the same. It's remained steady at 8,700 last year, 8,570 files this year for the entire coast. Sechelt was 3,568 of that 8,575. So we broke it down into Roberts Creek South and Sechelt North. Roberts Creek South had just over 3,000 files. Sechelt and North was 5,464. So significantly more. We're seeing more up here. So some of the challenges have been, and I've been quite open about the fact that, the drugs and our addictions and our issues in our community have been difficult with the opioid crisis and the meth crisis. So property crime and assaults, those are not domestic violence assaults, those are persons assaults, have increased. We've also had increase in frauds, and that's a lot, the online fraud, which is quite prevalent, and unfortunately with our demographic and with our elderly population, they often get targeted. And so part of the challenge, I would say, has been my front counter staff takes a lot of calls and a lot of walk-in from people that have questions around fraud. They may not have been frauded, but they're concerned around some social media activity, some weird emails that they've received. Those don't create files because they haven't actually, an offense hasn't occurred. They're just more seeking information. And so I've been told that has been a huge increase. So it's not on the statistics, but it's what we're noticing with the walkthroughs. So education around fraud is very important, and we've been trying to do that, but we haven't had always the capacity. Our police information checks. Last year we did 1,124 police information checks. That's a lot. So that's anywhere for volunteer work or for a job. Fingerprints, civil fingerprints, we took 339 sets of civil fingerprints last year. Each set of fingerprints takes an employee between 20 and 30 minutes. Yesterday, our front staff had to do 3. So that was over an hour spent in the back doing civil fingerprints and away from the front counter taking calls. And just the nature of the way it is now and protection, people need to have that and have these record checks done. So I think, where I'm going with this is that with the increase in property crime and assaults, there's a lot of the public that's asking, what can we do? What can we do to help? How can we get involved? How can we report crime better? How can we help the police? I've had a lot of people ask me, how can they help us? And there is a capacity for volunteer programs, and we're just not doing it. And we just don't. So there's the need for it, but we don't have the capacity. That's what I'm getting at. Our officers are pulled, the types of files and the investigations that we've been working on. They've been multi-jurisdictional offenders, some pretty serious offenses. The time to prepare for court and evidence and attending in court, some of our proactive has really slid off. And I don't feel that we are getting working with the community the way we could to have them help us. Because we're very successful when we're able to utilize programs such as Crime Stoppers, but we're just not doing it. Okay, go quick. So this is our basic budget based on our authorized strength of 11 regular members. How the RCMP bills is based on per regular member, because that includes training and costs associated to court, and it's not their wage, it's everything else that goes with it, equipment and kit and clothing. So at 100%, each police officer, the cost is $183,790. Overtime costs are not included in that. That is a line object that I have to manage in my budget, is my overtime. So it's separated out, and that is, the overtime is $124,950. The RCMP bills, because of the size of your municipality, at 70%. So the price of 11 members at 70% plus the overtime is $1,540,133. So then we have what's called the integrated teams, which you have been aware because they did their presentation to you last year. That is how much the integrated team charges to the Sechelt. The Real-Time Intelligence Center at the bottom, I just used them last week for an attempted fraud at the Bank of Nova Scotia. And they put out a bulletin across the province. So their job is to share information and help us solve crime. Multi-jurisdictional stuff's quite interesting. And so we were able to put out bank surveillance video to attempt to identify this person. So Dave and I have been talking about, but I think those numbers are correct as far as I know. So the total cost, $1,726,293. And what I wanted to say is sometimes it's going to dip below 11. So there's one position on the municipal side that I've moved over to a provincial body to run a vacancy for you, to be fair, because I feel that if the province is running vacancies, the municipality shouldn't have to be paying all of it. So as fair, I'm running a vacancy, but it hasn't come through our human resources management information system yet. So Dave just got the quarterly bill. It still shows 11. The next quarterly bill should show 10. And I did some calculations. I think it's around $30,000 it would save for a quarter having that vacancy. Okay, so I'm doing what I can to try to move some money around to be fair. Next, okay. And then this is Dave's slide, mostly because this comes from you guys, and him and I went over this together, just looking at the costs, and that worked out. His slide works out to be the same as mine, right? For when it comes to overtime.
Yep, I just wanted to, so the overtime number here doesn't completely match, but neither does the contracted services number. The original numbers we got from the RCMP had some errors in it, which were cleaned up in the previous slide. So these numbers in our budgets will change, but I think the overall is within $10,000. So we emailed RCMP on Friday or Thursday, and they got back to me on Monday. So I couldn't get it changed in our budgets here, but we were able to change it on the slide in time. The other thing you'll notice here is that victim witness services at the bottom and Crime Stoppers have been added to this budget this year. And they used to be in our granting system, and we talked about it at a previous meeting that we're going to move it in to be a line item within the budget. So we've moved it into this area to capture it. Although it's not a direct RCMP cost, it is a cost that's related to RCMP. So that's why it's in here.
And I just want you to take a look at the RCMP fees up the top. You'll notice year-to-date 2019, $20,419. We've allocated 13, but that is, we increased our fees for some of the checks and the reports that we have to do, court orders and requests from law offices and stuff. Our fees were quite low. And so we had to look at what the fees were in places like Powell River and Campbell River and similar sized detachments, and we increased some of our fees. So that's why you've seen that there's an increase there. So some revenue coming in from the work that our front office staff are doing to process these requests and these checks. So I just wanted you to note that. So just going quickly, so National Police Federation Association, that's our NPF, that's our new association. So we have a police union that's now come into effect. The issue for me today is I'm not asking for more police officers right now. We're right in the middle of determining a lot of things. This is the very first time the RCMP's had a union. They're looking at all our positions and what that means. I'm a non-commissioned officer. Anybody of my rank and lower belongs to the union. Anybody higher will not. And they're working on the logistics. And so anything to do with regular member job descriptions they have to go through the union first. So I can't even really discuss anything to do with that. The RCMP officers have not had a pay package since January 1st, 2017. We haven't had a raise. Everything's been frozen due to this union movement. My understanding is David has been putting money away as recommended by the RCMP for anticipated cost of living raises, etc. This slide was based on a letter that was sent to the District of Sechelt talking about the cost per member and what may come as a way of a retroactive type payment, looking at about $12,740 per police officer at 70%.
And once again, we just received this letter a week or so ago that asked us to carry a number forward. And although I think we have some coverage here, I'll be making sure that that's in our budget on the next go round.
Okay, so the big thing for me, the ask that I'm bringing to you today that I would like in respectful consideration is the whole issue around community engagement and how important it is to crime prevention. Right now, and over the last few years, Sunshine Coast RCMP has not had the capacity to coordinate community volunteers and ensure that community programs are functioning and supported. There is a need to educate the public, especially on situations like our frauds and our youth. We have a lot of issues with some youth and bullying and online, and that need is there, but the capacity just isn't. And I feel like we have been not able to really do what we could. And the community is asking, what can we do? And we have some programs in place that have sort of they've really just folded, for lack of better terms. We have Davis Speed Watch. We had Citizens on Patrol. I'd love to see Block Watch. We could really be doing a lot with Crime Stoppers. We really could be doing a lot with that, and we're just not. And I feel that it's a lot of work to work with volunteers because you have to ensure that they're working within their lanes and they understand where their authorities lie. And it's very important to engage with them and keep them, and they need a point of contact. And if a police officer was that point of contact, I feel that it gets lost because the police officer might be shifting and doing different things. And I feel that the volunteers may not get what they need. And I really feel that a municipal employee for all things volunteer is what I'm asking. I'm asking you to consider a municipal employee position for the District of Sechelt to work out of my office as a crime prevention coordinator. We looked at what the costing would be. So I'm looking at a basic entry, same as we have a couple of other people in my office that are working. And I think right now, it's very busy for criminal record checks and things, and I think a community prevention coordinator would be able to coordinate day-to-day operations of community-based crime prevention programs such as Block Watch, Citizens on Patrol, and Speed Watch, organize community and special events such as safety and security forums, fraud awareness, the detachment open house. I was just asked to go to the Downtown Business Association, their meeting on February 20th. And I think having somebody who's connecting with the community and helping provide and liaison will be very important. looking at someone who can develop, recommend, and implement new volunteer crime prevention programs. I don't have the information for you today, my apologies, but North Vancouver had huge success with Blockwatch. They've got proven that crime is reducing because of Blockwatch, and we don't have that, and I would love to see that happening. I'd like to see this person recruit and select, train and correspond and schedule and monitor volunteer groups, engage with community policing and office support services, liaise with various community service agencies, government bodies, police members, members of the public, on matters such as available services, community resources, and promoting and encouraging participation in community policing and crime prevention programs. This person could also look at soliciting funding and grant writing, and making presentation to external groups and hosting meetings and public events. Day-to-day operations, assisting with the front counter, conducting police information checks and civil fingerprinting, and reception service. So that is my ask, for your consideration.
So this ask is not in the budget so far. And the first year would be less than the $72,000 because we're already 2 months in. It would probably take another 2 or 3 months to fill it. So you'd be probably looking at around $50,000 for the first year, and then the uplift in the second year to the 72.
Okay, thank you. That was great presentation. Questions from the team? Mayor Seegers.
Thank you. So this position, 72,000 crime prevention coordinator, would that just be for Sechelt? You know where I'm going with that.
I know, and I absolutely do. And so that was part of why I wanted to speak, and I didn't get into it too much in depth, but wanted to speak to our calls for service and the fact that Davis Bay is part of Sechelt. Davis Bay is very passionate about some of their community issues that they've got going on right now. And their community association is very wants to work with the police and wants that. And that capacity, just we're not filling that for them. And there's speed watch that could be happening in Davis Bay that we're not doing. With the increase in the break and enters, that caused a lot of, reach out into the district of Sechelt downtown, our homeless issues and our increase in their crime. I think that getting that information and sharing and soliciting from our community partners for safety around the downtown core, I think honestly the need is in Sechelt. This is where the most of the files are. This is where most of the crime is occurring, is up here. And I think we could look at how much time is spent where. But the funding from the criminal record checks and stuff is all going 100% back into the District of Sechelt revenue. And we have increased the cost, the costs associated with that. You can see it hasn't increased. So, I mean, I feel that this is where we have the most need, and I really think it is a District of Sechelt issue.
Anybody else?
I'd like to have a go at her here a bit. In the budget here, you've got 11 staff members at 183,000. So the 183, would that be the person, the constable or whatever it is, and that would be his benefits and the car and the equipment. So that's, you get a complete guy.
Yeah, and that includes the vehicles. Repairs to vehicles are under my operating budget, but the vehicles and the equipment and the training of that police officer is part of that cost.
So for 72,000, would that be that would be the coordinator, their wages and benefits and that's their whole package?
Yes. That'd be a municipal position. Sorry, it'd be a municipal employee.
Figures?
Thank you. So you pointed us to page 72, where it looks at the RCMP and numbers. And then I looked at what Staff Sergeant put up on the screen, and those numbers don't match. Is that to do with the errors that were in the information from the province, or does it have to do part with that and part with the fiscal year versus the annual year? Like have we reconciled those numbers across from what Poppy's got in front of us and these? Or is
Okay,
that still
so
coming?
this, no, we don't. Where's the RCMP budget? This one's the library, I think. Okay, can we go to Poppy's presentation? So this is more of a summary than Poppy's presentation. So what's not in, one more, here we go. Okay, so this reconciles to page 72. And so the difference between what Poppy with 11, the strength of 11, is we've included here the municipal employees, their benefits, and other administrative costs that are borne by the municipality.
Councillor Topp.
Thank you. Question, I suppose, for Mr. Douglas. Looking at the 2019 budget versus the year-to-date, contract services show a $810,000 discrepancy. I'm just wondering.
Yeah, their billing is later than, like we just got the billing for quarter 3 the other day. So this is only showing 2 quarters at this point.
Councillor McLean.
Just first, a quick comment. I understand that you are going to the Davis Bay Community Association later today. So I'm hoping you can be transparent about this ask with them as well. But to an actual question, I've heard comments about slow response time with the non-emergency line. Would this position help with that at all?
So we're in a situation where we have a contract with Ecom to answer and dispatch our non-emergency and our 911. We're very unique in that way. Some of the detachments are dispatching themselves during office hours. We're right now in that situation where we are not doing that. So our front counter staff are technically, when someone comes in, are technically supposed to put that call through to Ecom to have it dispatched. So we're having a problem with that because Ecom is struggling to manage this. And so we have to be very careful around that contract, even though the obvious would be to just step back into the office if there's an officer available and bring them. So front counter complaints, our officers are coming right to and dealing with. Somebody calling over the phone, they are technically supposed to be transferred to an office, to Ecom to be dispatched. It's one of those situations that's hard. We've worked around it a few times. We're doing our best, but it's in a way higher level situation than I can speak to. There's people on a committee. There's high level RCMP officers on a committee trying to work through this because it is a real struggle for us. And if people are on hold for 45 minutes or longer, that's not acceptable. And it's not the RCMP, it's Ecom, unfortunately. And so we are doing our best to work with that. That's what I can say.
Anybody else? No? Brenda, comments?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, I'm outside and it's really noisy, but I'm wondering, Poppy, is there a similar size community that has this type of model with a community prevention officer, or not, crime prevention officer that's employed by the municipality?
Thank you for a question, Brenda. Absolutely. And I did a lot of research into this when I was looking at what kind of position this is. White Rock Detachment has this exact position, very, very similar. And Burnaby actually does as well. However, their position coordinates victim services So it's a higher level position. There's a little more to it. So it's not the same, but some of the language out of both of those positions, I had a look at just to see what, how that would work for us, and also canvass the staff as to what they felt their needs were, and was this something that would help us give a better service delivery, and that's what we came up with this position.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? No? That's it. Thank you very much. That was really good.
Thank you.
Thank you. So just a quick comment. We're moving along in time here. However, we really would like to get through the parks budget as he's away as Jamie's away for the next couple of weeks. So it may take us a little further than the 4:30, and then have to adopt the items on the agenda.
Okay. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you for allowing me to present the 2020 budget for the Parks Department. So a quick overview. I'm sure most of you know what we do. We look after the 34 parks in the district, 53 beach accesses, 10 playgrounds, trails, green spaces, all the gardens downtown, annual plantings, baskets, tennis courts, all kinds of things. Some things that might not have struck you, we actually have over 21 kilometers of trails that we maintain. We will be having another 14 added to that once the Suncoaster Trail is completed. We do the snow and ice sidewalk maintenance, and we also do a lot of event support. So on that topic of community event assistance, last year the Parks Department provided support for 19 special events throughout the year. Some of the larger ones included the Canada Day events, Sleepy Hollow Rod Run and Show and Shine, the Hackett Park Craft Fair, Festival of the Written Arts, Sechelt Arts Festival, the Light the Lights events at Rockwood, Parade of Lights, and Oceans Day, a bunch of other ones. Anyway, what that amounts to is staff setting up tents, barricades, all kinds of things, adding garbage cans for these events. It takes up a lot of time. So that was 1,100 hours that our staff put in supporting these community events, which we're happy to do, and I find it a very important part of our job. But when you add that up, that actually adds up to about 146 days for one employee over the year. So it does add up. This slide basically shows you our expenditures, our salaries, wages, and benefits. So that's a negotiated increase. The contracted services, we're asking for 9,900 more. I'll get to that in a minute. Supplies and materials is the other one that's going up by 9,500, and I will get to that in a minute. The revenues. So we actually have revenues from such things as the golf course fees, our mobile vending fees, the farmers market is giving us some money, and various grants like Tree Canada. So in 2020, other than the negotiated wages and benefits line, the only proposed increases to the park's operating budget fall into the categories of contracted services and supplies and materials. So I'll just kind of break it down for you. What contracted services include are such items like the professional tree service work, septage pumping for Davis Bay Washroom, the portable toilet cleaning that, you find the portable toilets at, Piccadilly Park and Snicket and things like that. Also the specialized equipment contracting that we have for the sports field maintenance. We also hire a lot of electricians, carpenters. We have the archaeological monitors, which I'm sure you're all aware of. We also hire bucket trucks for installing, the banners and Christmas lights and wreaths and whatnot. And some examples of the supplies and materials that we're using on a regular basis include fertilizers and lime, soil, shrubs, all our flowers, trees, even things like toilet paper and soap for the washrooms comes out of the old Parks Department budget. We also buy a lot of salt and ice melter on occasion. And we can't forget the garbage bags and the doggy bags. So for 2020, there's a couple of proposed budget increases. This one kind of falls under the contracted services line. And basically what I'll say is the Parks Department currently has professional cleaning for each of its 4 washrooms once a week. The increase in the contracted services budget would allow for daily cleaning at 3 of our most active washrooms during our busy summer season. Increased use, mischief, and vandalism are amongst the issues that have put a strain on the Parks Department with regards to keeping the washrooms clean and safe. As a tourist destination, it's important to leave our visitors with a positive view of our public facilities, and a projected $9,900 increase to the contracted services budget should cover this cost. And those locations would be Friendship, Hackett, and Davis Bay. Those are our 3 busiest. And so far, Kinnickinnic Park hasn't really been an issue. We're able to stay on top of that. The other item would be the power tailgate. So the Parks Department currently has a power tailgate on one of its 2-wheel drive vehicles, and we're requesting a second power tailgate for one of our 4-wheel drive trucks. These lift units are used for garbage duties as well as for loading snow blowers, lawnmowers, benches, other heavy equipment and supplies that would otherwise be unsafe to lift. It would also allow snow blowers to be loaded and taken to areas like West Sechelt or Davis Bay to help clear snow when the 2-wheel drive pickup can't get to those locations. It's proved to be an invaluable piece of equipment in the fleet. It wasn't such a big item to include in a capital request, and I was advised that it was just kind of more of a one-time operating budget request. So the cost of that would be approximately $6,000. In conclusion, with a slight increase to the 2020 budget for contracted services, as well as supplies and materials, the Parks Department will be able to improve on the levels of service that residents and visitors have come to enjoy, expect, and appreciate. And that's it. Is there any questions?
Thank you. Questions from council? Mayor Seegers?
Hello. Thank you for that. Couple of things that we've been looking at in the last while. Capital asset replacement. Do we actually have money in our budget to replace things like picnic benches and park benches and equipment at Hackett Park and any of those?
Not that I'm aware of. No. We try to maintain things as best as we can, so we're not replacing some of these items. Right. There's a fleet replacement.
Yeah.
But as far as I'm aware, not individual benches and things like that.
So one of the things that the community's asked for is different equipment in some of the parks. So they've come up with things like adult fitness equipment.
Yeah.
Right? Or, the different kinds of things that can go in the parks would serve a huge population here. Some people are talking about things like a tot park, right? That some of the equipment may need to be upgraded in there. Do we have those kinds of things? We don't have those in our budgets at all.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, and some of those items are very expensive. Just to upgrade a playground is a lot of money. Like we're talking over $100,000 if you want to do something over the top. I think West Sechelt's playground was over $100,000. So it is something to take into consideration going forward for sure.
Okay.
Councillor McLean.
Now I'm going to get ahead of us a little bit. So Dave, please jump in if you need to, but recognizing that Jamie's going away for a bit, are we looking at any capital projects within the Parks Department in this upcoming year?
Yeah, I don't have that in front of me right now, but he's always asking for things, yes.
Mayor Seegers.
Okay, so question. I'm going to ask each of the departments. I mentioned this to the couple of people here. If you were to look to improve your department today, what would you need to add?
Well, some of the things that I need to add are already in the capital request kind of bucket there. And some of them relate back to even reducing our costs for, say, contracted services. We're reliant on contractors for things like sports field maintenance. You know, there's a couple of key pieces of equipment. If we had that, that would help us out. Getting into the fact that we have, 21 kilometers of trails as we speak, add another 14. That's long distance for a lot of people to, say, get into the middle of the forest with chainsaws and things. So a utility vehicle, like a little, Kubota or a Gator, those are the kinds of things that will save us hours and hours, hauling stuff down to the Chapman Bridge because there's a tree down. It takes us a lot of time to look after these trails. We could get in much faster, much more efficiently with that kind of things. But those are the capital, those are a couple of the capital requests that I have in. So
those are in the list already?
Yeah.
Okay. I think, do you want me to ask my other question?
Sure, yeah.
Okay. So one of the things that I've noticed is, like, where are we with asset management? I mean, that kind of leads into asset management question, right? What are we doing around that?
Not a lot. We have a report or two within the engineering department with regards to the bigger assets like roads. But as per other assets, other than departments may have some inventory of them, and they know what their conditions are, those are things that we need to track and get onto. And so I have one slide in my department that talks about asset management and asset coordinator to take on that role of inventorying and getting on to knowing what the conditions are and expected life, with the intention to do like a 25-year capital plan, right? And so that's what that could involve. But yeah, as per asset management is limited. Go ahead.
Follow up. So you actually have an asset management position or asset coordinator position in your budget that you're bringing forward as a request?
Not in my budget. It's one of those wish list things that we would like to have.
Okay.
I think there'll be a day when the provinces will be expecting municipalities to have a well-organized asset management plan before you get grants.
They're starting that.
Yeah, so...
I mean, that's one of the criteria already for the last few years.
Right. And so right now, what they're asking for at the end of grants is, how do you plan to manage this asset? And so we can produce those plans as those grants come to an end. However, to get grants, you're going to have a pretty integrated asset management planning, background and inventory conditions and all that kind of stuff.
Well, I know the conversations that we've had at this table, Councilor McLean brings it up a lot around service levels, right? So what kind of service levels are we providing? How do we know if we're funding adequately or not? If we're looking at increasing in one area, is there something we can decrease or not? Those are the kinds of conversations that we're bantering around back and forth. But until we actually have a handle on what the state of our assets are and how we can allocate funding for maintenance and improvement for those, we can't actually look at service levels.
Yeah, good comment, because, I'll tell you right now, we have not spent much in our building maintenance over the number of years that, over the last, I don't know how many years, I just look back 3 or 4 years, but not a lot has been spent on building maintenance. Well, we have issues at all of our buildings, and some may be small and some may be a little bit bigger, but if we had a proper asset management plan, we'd know those well in advance as we go forward.
Brenda, did you have any questions?
Yeah, a question for Jamie. Darnell just squirreled there a little bit, I noticed.
Go ahead.
Jamie, with regards to sports field maintenance equipment,
Are we looking at opportunities to share with the other governments? In other words, you know, Gibson's buys one piece of equipment, we buy another, and then we share it amongst maintaining all the sports field, or is that too pie in the sky?
No, you're absolutely reading my mind. I actually just attended the Better Fields Committee meeting with the SARD, the Town of Gibson's, SD46, and the band had a presentation as well. So we are in talks, and we have had some discussions behind the scenes as to what, say, the SARD would purchase, what we would purchase, and you know, through simple MOUs, I think we could actually all be working together on getting these sports fields a bit better, for sure.
Oh, that's awesome to hear. It makes way more sense that we're not all paying contractors when we buy equipment and share it. So thanks for that.
Exactly. Thanks.
Mayor Seegers.
Thank you. So we just finished the budget at the regional district yesterday, like draft. It's draft at this point, it hasn't been approved, but in there was the aerator. So regional districts looking at buying the aerator. And I think I've heard, haven't seen what you're bringing forward, but talk about an overseer or something that would be shared up and down the coast.
Yep.
One of the things that they put forward with the aerator was all of the governments on the Sunshine Coast are bringing somebody up from Vancouver. It costs $10,000 each time they bring them up.
Yeah.
And this one piece of equipment is $60,000. So 6 trips and you got it paid for.
Yeah.
Right. And it's being shared. It'll be shared back and forth. So
exactly.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
The other piece, though, that is a conversation that we need to look at is if we're putting money into fields, if we're going to be bringing them up to some kind of standard, how do we water them? We need to ensure that we actually then maintain the asset that we're improving.
Exactly. We've thrown a lot of money at the fields, even to this stage, and you're kind of starting from scratch every fall if you don't water. Mm-hmm. So
we need to look
no,
at
it's an important part of that equation for sure.
All right. Thank you.
Great. Thanks.
Councilor McLean.
Yeah, just one more on your request for the lift gate. What are we plowing it, or what is Parks doing in West Sechelt that they need snow blowers over there?
So we have different parks up in West Sechelt. We have Tyler Heights, Cascade Green. What are other spots? Just trying to think what our other sidewalks are in West Sechelt.
Okay, so those are sidewalks in front of parks?
Okay. We basically do any sidewalk around a municipal building, around any park. And when you get 2 feet of snow, which doesn't happen every year, but when it does, and then people walk on it, it's pretty hard to shovel that. So we get the snow blowers out, but getting to Davis Bay to do Davis Bay Walkway, getting to West Sechelt has been an issue with the 2-wheel drive truck. Plus, you can't split up. You've got all your eggs in one basket, you know, basically with 2 snow blowers in one truck.
Okay.
So that would let us spread out and cover everything. So
we have 2 snow blowers?
We have 2 snow blowers, yeah.
Excellent, okay.
Yeah. Well serviced, they're ready to go.
Okay. Brenda, any more? Are you good?
I'm good.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Jamie. Enjoy your holiday. So, are we switching gears to 5.2? All right. So, first one, fourth quarter department progress reports. From, yeah. Moved, seconded, all in favor? And over to you. Oh, okay. Does anybody have any questions on the report?
No.
Okay. Sanders off the hook. And what about, I guess, receive the report, or did we receive all the reports, or, okay. So the next one for the report from the Director of Financial Services, any questions? Councillor Top.
I do have a question, and I think I'm in the right department for this. On page 89, sewer chemical supplies are tracking above what was expected. How much above what was expected? Do we know?
I'm sorry, offhand, I don't know exactly where it finished above budget, but I know it was 50,000 less compared to the prior year, because I had just made a note as I was skimming through it that we finished better with the reduction in chemical supply use in 2019 compared to 2018, and also the hydro use is down significantly from 2019 compared to 2018, which are two really good signs.
This is also an area where the plant operator has been working really, really hard with the processes all around the filtering and whatnot to try and lessen this amount. It's been one of the issues that we are dealing with the consultant, Mr. Nash, as well.
Councillor McLean.
Not a question, just a quick comment. I note in here that there's a council policy manual review that's being undertaken. I'm really looking forward to seeing that. I think that's going to really help us govern the organization, because policies are key in that. So looking forward to it.
Mr. Seegers.
Thank you. On page 87, it talks about the financial department transitioning to on-base and paperless filing. Good job.
Thank you.
I remember at the end of the, I mean, we've got the capability to do it. And I remember coming in at the end of 2019, actually, yeah, and seeing all of these boxes of files and things that were going away for storage in our archives. We don't need to do that. So thank you for taking the lead on that. Thank you for moving that forward.
No problem. You're welcome. The any new paper files that we are producing are now being scanned and put into OnBase and then shredded. So we should have no new paper files for 2020.
Councillor Tom.
Well, and I recall having seen somewhere an accelerated schedule being looked at from corporate services to help carry that forward. So that's great.
Okay. Brenda, any questions? Comments before we move to the next one?
Nope.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, Councillor Tom.
I promise it's the last one. Page 92, the lagoon desludging. We actually saved money on that. The budget ask was $200,000, and I'm seeing $163,000 here. So we actually saved money there.
That's correct. However, there were some other operation costs in other categories for some pumping and stuff, so it did come up a bit.
Okay, moving on to the Director of Planning and Development report. Questions on that one? Councillor McLean.
I recognize our director had to leave, so I'm just going to throw this one out there for staff in general or the CAO. One of the priorities is development of a new community amenity contribution policy. That's one I want to see us continuing to dig our teeth into. I think uncertainty isn't a good thing in terms of that program, so we just need to move forward and get something out there.
Councillor Top.
Yeah, item number 3 on page 97, the public serving development tracker. The web link is on the next page, but that's a fantastic tool. Being able to click on a parcel, you can actually see the map. You can click on a parcel, you can see what status that project is at, the date of the last update, who's doing it. There's a lot of really good information there, and I think that beats that giant spreadsheet that kept coming forward.
Councillor McLean.
I also noticed that we are working on active travel for kids. That's something that I think is incredibly important, and I'm hoping to see some capital budget requests to go along with that. I don't know how far along the project is, but let's get our kids to school by walking and biking rather than in their parents' cars, creating that mess we see at every school.
Okay. On to the last report, Director of Engineering and Operations. Councillor Toth.
Bottom of page 106, bylaw 430 review. I see here that ISL is going to have stuff to staff by the end of February 2020, and that we'll be, as council, we'll be seeing it sometime in August. I'm just wondering why the huge gap.
That could be brought forward a lot sooner. However, we wanted the SMT and staff to have another review at it before we bring you the other version.
Anything else? Councillor Rowe?
No, I'm good.
Okay, thank you. Oh, Councillor Toth, one more.
Sorry, this always generates lots of questions. On page 111, the very end, under item 6, talks about chemical treatment of Japanese knotweed and giant hogweed. Japanese knotweed is, of course, a highly visible problem in our community, giant hogweed being the more dangerous one. How big of a problem is it here?
I would say we've got a pretty good handle on the Japanese knotweed within the district. Throughout the coast, it's a much bigger problem. The hogweed itself, giant hogweed's not a huge problem. We haven't seen a lot of it spreading around. So there was an incident just off Field Road last year, and that's the only incident I know of about. So at this point, I wouldn't sound the alarms. I don't think people need to be freaking out about giant hogweed everywhere.
Might only be a problem once a year, maybe, if...
That's the first incident I can recall in my 7 years here.
Thank
you.
Councillor McLean.
I'm just going to follow up on that question. When should the public give us a call regarding invasive species like knotweed and hogweed?
They should call us at the first sign of it.
Even if it's on private property?
If it's on private property, we have tools at our disposal. We can actually use our bylaw enforcement to force treatment, and we've done so in the past. So we're pretty hard-nosed when it comes to the invasives. I wish I could say the same thing about the whole region in general, but no, Sechelt's we've got a pretty good handle on it.
Excellent, thank you.
Mayor Seegers.
Thank you. 2 questions. One is disposal. So currently what I'm hearing is we don't have a way or place to dispose of Japanese knotweed on the Sunshine Coast. Those who take it here actually have to take it off coast because they have places they can dispose of it there. So that's one. And then the other, what about Scotch broom?
So the disposal is definitely a hot topic with the regional invasive working group. So apparently before the 14th of February, there's supposed to be, I'm supposed to get an answer back from Julie Clark from the SCRD about this working group. And that is basically the biggest hot topic is the disposal. At this point, we don't have an option on the coast that I'm aware of. And sorry, what was your question about the Scotch broom? Same thing, disposal?
Well, I mean, I look around and in the spring, it looks really nice.
Yeah.
Right? You got this yellow everywhere.
Yes.
It's an issue.
It is an issue. It's not as hard to get rid of as, say, Japanese knotweed.
Right.
We deal with broom as we can within our, general operations. I've actually got a contractor coming up hopefully to Clayton's Park to deal with a lot of Scotch broom and blackberry up there. But it's not one that scares me as much as knotweed. When you get it by the root, it's gone. Even when you have to, say, clear-cut Scotch broom, if you do it when it's in full flower, it really kind of zaps the energy and it doesn't necessarily come back. So there is ways to deal with Scotch broom.
Right, so that's on our property. What about private property? Because I mean, there's lots of places in the district where you drive around and there's Scotch room everywhere, and lots of seats.
I guess we could talk to bylaw enforcement about that too, if it's, if we deem that's necessary. I know they've got a lot on their plate, but we could technically enforce that too, I guess.
From what I understand with Scotch broom is because of the oil in it, if it was to catch on fire, it spreads like crazy. Like you can't stop it. It goes really quickly.
Yeah, there's definitely a creosote in it, and actually it's very good at outcompeting the other plants around it. It basically kind of kills the soil around it. So no, it's not a good one. Not painting it with a rosy brush, but it is possible to get a handle on it. Where Edgewater was just a field of broom, and that development went in, and they're getting a handle on it, and we've got some help from volunteers down there. So
Other communities look at a Scotch broom day as one of the ways they go about it, where the entire community goes out and cuts Scotch broom, dumps it on the side of the road. We pick it up and get rid of it. Or volunteer committees who do it year-round. I know on the island near Port Alberni, there's a lady single-handedly does Scotch broom all over the countryside all by herself. It's incredible. So volunteers would be helpful.
Oh, broom busters in Half Moon Bay, right? That's their job.
We do have volunteers that come out and do that as well. So there's members of the public that people don't even know about that volunteer to come down and do little work junkets like that. And yeah, there's opportunities. If anyone has friends that want to volunteer to pull Scotch broom, I'll sign them up.
Okay. Thank you very much. I think we're at the end. Motion to adjourn.
Just wonder if we have a conversation around a longer meeting, as we only got through 3 items here, and we still have probably another 8 departments beyond this to go.
So council's saying, please, yes, please.
Please? So we can either do the next committee the whole timing, or, which probably would make sense, we can go maybe a little earlier and go a little later, or start at 3 and just go later. That's the 26th, I believe.
We could have Carrie Ann try to coordinate a longer day for you when she gets back tomorrow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll do that.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'd just like to take a minute just to bring something new to the floor here with the budget, something that I believe that we should be looking at it in the budget. And so I just, one of the things that seems to be in the community, our community, but it's a worldwide problem, seems to be housing and affordable housing. It doesn't matter whether it's workplace, affordable housing, whatever. So I'd like to have a look as we go through the budget to see if we could put an assessment on our taxes. And I'm going to use, just round numbers. I'm looking at if you have an assessment of $500,000, that there would be a $10 fee for that, or an assessment for that house. And it would go strictly into affordable housing, and to benefit that part of our community. And I just believe that this is, it's something that our whole community will benefit from. And with a little bit of luck, maybe we can take some of the, well, I won't go there first. But I'd just like to, I think it was something we should look at. And the reality is that what happens with that is we might end up with say if it's $100,000 that we accumulate from our community, we know that money's coming in every year. And so it'll actually give some clout to our affordable housing commitment. And So like right now, we basically have nothing in our, I mean, if we've got $50,000 in there, we don't have a whole bunch of development on the horizon or in the, that we know of that's going to contribute. So at least every year we'd have some sort of money coming into that fund. So that's my number one thing. So I'd just like to see if there's any flavor from the council to look at that.
Councillor McLean.
Thank you for bringing this up. I think we look at how we fund affordable housing right now, and it's 100% from development. And we end up with a reserve of $63,000 that isn't moving too quickly. So I think I'd like to see it funded from both sides, but we need to start the conversation on how the general tax base does fund affordable housing, because it's an issue that affects the entire community, and this is a great way. How I could see this working is that this fund would go directly into our affordable housing reserve, which we recently passed a policy on, which would dictate how we can spend this money. So that part, I think, is done. We just need to figure out how we're collecting the money, and I want to second this motion if there is a motion there. I don't think there is, though.
Okay. Mayor Seegers.
I agree that we need to move forward on affordable housing, workforce housing. We're looking to have economic development in our community. We want businesses to come here, but we find their employees can't find a place to live, or they don't want to buy a place necessarily when they come. They're coming and taking a job, making sure everything works out before they want to invest in the market. They can't find a place. I recently got just before Christmas, actually, I got a message from the new director at the hospital saying we put out an offer to a nurse to come to the hospital here. She accepted the position. She's come up here a number of times to try and find a place. Now, admittedly, she had a couple of dogs. Okay, she had a couple of dogs, but she could not find a place to rent. She was giving up the position and not coming because she could not find a place to rent. So, I mean, we put it out to a big market to try and find her place. I think in the end we finally found something, but that's a huge issue. Tourism was just here. Destination marketing. We have people coming, we have our own residents saying the quality of service that we're getting in our stores, in our restaurants, everywhere is not necessarily what they want to see when we're busy in the summer. Well, it's because we can't have people who live here to work there. They don't have a place to live. So if we actually had a pot of money, I mean, what the workforce housing people who were here last week told us, if we had some money that we could buy some land and contribute it, CMHC, BC Housing, they're ready to give money. We need that pocket. We need that initial investment to be able to have those projects move forward. And they're just waiting. I had a conversation with one of the people from BC Housing, and they said they want to give us money here to build 3-bedroom rental units for families. We have no place to put it because we don't have the land. So those are the kinds of things that this would actually help us move forward. I think it's one of the very basic pieces that are going to start moving the community forward. So totally in support.
Okay. Anybody else?
Just got one other thing to contribute to that. So there's two things here. So like I'm sort of looking at if it was $10 for 500,000, if you had a place that was worth 250,000, then you'd be paying $5. If you had $1 million home, you'd be assessed value $1 million home, you'd be paying $20. And this would go right through the industrial, commercial, every piece of property. So the other part of this too is that I would like to look at, as we move along through the year, I'd like to have a look at our DCCs and just see if we can maybe reorganize the DCCs as to make them more prevalent to what we need in the community. And so if we have this if we have this, if this does pass and we do get this assessment going this way, then, you know, maybe we can look at the affordable housing DCC or whatever that part of the DCCs are, and then and reorganize that. Maybe draw it down a bit so it makes it just more affordable all the way around. So that's it.
Just a quick comment. That's the community amenity would be that, not the DCC, but it's a charge on development properties. Yes.
That's exactly what I'd like to have us look at. Thank you.
Mayor Seegers.
Thank you. So would you like to make a recommendation? I think, yes, you. I think what you're asking is, I mean, so you've come forward with this idea, right? I think we need staff to come back to us with what the impact would be. Like if it's $10, if that's kind of your number at 500,000, what does that look like? Right? That's because that's a piece we need to look at and the community needs to become aware of if we're looking at moving something like that forward. I mean, if we were to put $10 on and we get $50,000, we might want to increase it. I mean, I don't know what the number's going to be, right? I think that's kind of what we want to look at.
Yeah, I think I look at the ways and means, but I think the best way is through the variable tax, right? So although at a 500 grand it'd be $10 and at $1 million it'd be $20, you know, it would have a skew to it as if you're at $750,000 assessment, you'd be paying like, I don't know, $15 or something like that. So that's the way I'd probably start to look at it. So I can maybe provide some analysis at the tail end of all the departments about how that would look.
Would you like a recommendation on the books so that it's formal? No?
No, I'll take that as to provide at the end of all the departments.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. On to adjournment. So moved. All in favor? Questions?